Cuba and the United States are close neighbors, separated by only 90 miles of ocean. This proximity has shaped a complex history between the two nations. From the outset, their relationship has been marked by both connection and conflict. The United States, a rising power in the 19th century, took an early interest in Cuba, then a Spanish colony. The Treaty of Paris marked a pivotal moment in the history of Cuba and its relationship with the United States. Signed in Paris, France on December 10, 1898, the treaty officially ended the Spanish-American War. The war, which lasted just over 3 months, resulted in a decisive victory for the United States. Spain's defeat had far-reaching consequences for its once vast empire. The negotiations surrounding the status of Cuba were tense and protracted. Spain, burdened by war debts and eager to divest itself of its colonial possessions, sought to cede Cuba to the United States, along with its substantial $400 million debt. This proposal, however, was met with resistance from the U.S. delegation. While the Treaty of Paris granted Cuba its nominal independence, it also included provisions that significantly limited Cuba's sovereignty. These provisions, later formalized in the Platt Amendment, became a source of lasting controversy and resentment in Cuba. The Platt Amendment, named after Senator Orville Platt of Connecticut, was passed by the United States Congress in 1901. It stipulated a series of conditions that Cuba had to agree to before the United States would withdraw its troops from the island. Narrator at 10X. Subscribe for more content on the history of Cuba and the U.S. Following the signing of the Treaty of Paris, the United States assumed temporary control of Cuba. This period, which lasted from 1898 to 1902, marked the beginning of a new era in U.S.-Cuba relations. The U.S. military, which had played a decisive role in the war against Spain, remained stationed on the island to oversee the transition to Cuban self-government. The influence of the U.S. provisional government extended beyond infrastructure and public services. The United States sought to shape Cuba's political and economic systems to align with its own interests. One of the most significant interventions during this period was the imposition of the Platt Amendment. The period of U.S. provisional control also witnessed a significant influx of American investments in the Cuban economy. American companies, attracted by Cuba's fertile land and its proximity to the U.S. market, invested heavily in sugar plantations, mining operations, and other industries. The first decades of the 20th century witnessed a dramatic transformation of the Cuban economy, driven largely by the booming sugar industry. American investments, coupled with favorable trade agreements, fueled an unprecedented expansion of sugar production. Vast sugar plantations, many owned by U.S. corporations, dominated the Cuban countryside, and their sprawling fields stood as a testament to the island's new role as a sugar bowl for the United States. Alongside the sugar boom, a new industry began to emerge in Cuba: tourism. The island's proximity to the United States, combined with its tropical climate, beautiful beaches, and vibrant culture, made it an alluring destination for American tourists seeking escape from prohibition and the monotony of everyday life. While the Cuban economy experienced significant growth during the first decades of the 20th century, this growth was unevenly distributed and came at the cost of increasing dependence on the United States. The sugar boom, while initially beneficial, tied Cuba's economic fortunes to the volatile world sugar market and to the policies of the United States. The year 1959 marked a watershed moment in U.S.-Cuba relations. The Cuban Revolution, led by Fidel Castro, toppled the U.S.-backed dictatorship of Fulgencio Batista, sending shockwaves throughout the Caribbean and beyond. The triumph of the revolution marked the end of U.S. dominance in Cuba, and ushered in a new era of socialist governance, fundamentally altering the dynamics between the two nations. The U.S. embargo on Cuba, implemented in 1960 and expanded in subsequent years, has become one of the most enduring symbols of the Cold War and a major point of contention in U.S.-Cuba relations. The embargo, initially intended to pressure Castro to step down and abandon his socialist policies, has had a devastating impact on the Cuban economy, limiting its access to essential goods, technology, and investment. After decades of hostility and estrangement, a glimmer of hope emerged in U.S.-Cuba relations during the Obama administration. In 2014, President Barack Obama announced a historic shift in U.S. policy toward Cuba, initiating a process of rapprochement aimed at normalizing relations between the two countries. The relationship between Cuba and the United States has been inextricably linked by geography and profoundly shaped by history. Their proximity, just 90 miles across the Straits of Florida, has fueled both cooperation and conflict, fostering deep connections while also driving them apart. From the early days of U.S. interest in Cuba during its struggle for independence from Spain to the tumultuous years of the Cold War and the enduring legacy of the U.S. embargo, the two nations have navigated a complex and often contradictory path. If you want to see more stories like these, subscribe now to the channel. Mysteries of the White House at Misterios de la Casa Blanca.